Hey guys, since I lost my entire beetle colony recently, I'll put that link in the video description below, I decided that this video was way overdue. How to make a simple beetle dermestidarium. A beginner's guide. First, I'm going to show you the process and how I make it, then at the end I'll explain all the parameters on how to make the beetles flourish. First thing we need is a tank. Luckily, I had this 20-gallon sitting in the backyard that had been macerating a large sulcata tortoise all summer. I've used it for beetles before, so it still had a camera mount in it. There's a piece of the tortoise now. So obviously this thing was chock full of nasty bacteria water, algae, and hard water stains, so we're going to give it a thorough cleaning. Rinsing, scrubbing, and a vinegar wash. The silicone lining on the bottom has been all chewed up, but that's just fine. We don't need it to hold water. In fact, I'm surprised that it did hold water all summer for that tortoise. After a final rinse, I left it in the sun to dry. Once dry, I brought it inside and assembled my materials. A lot of the stuff I already had around the house, but I did have to buy a few new things. I couldn't find my rolls and rolls of mesh screen, but luckily this one is only like $6 or $7 at a hardware store. Since this tank is long lost and forgotten, I also had to buy a new lid. They are found at any big box pet store. This one was like $20. Most generic lids fit most generic tanks, but it is a bit loose, so we'll have to address that. First thing is we're going to double and triple protect our screen top. The best defense against losing your entire beetle colony to an infestation is never letting anything inside that you don't want. To reiterate, the screen is not to keep your beetles in, it is to keep everything else out. Your colony and the meals you leave it will attract flies, which will lay eggs and leaving you with smelly, maggoty mess. Or it could attract wild dermestids, which could be carrying mites, diseases, and other pests. Important note: if you ever see dermestid beetles or their larvae on the outside of your enclosure or on top of the lid, you need to assume they are wild insects and have potential contamination, and you need to place them back outside or kill them. Do not pop the lid and throw them inside. That defeats the entire purpose of the lid. Anyways, you've probably realized by now that I'm making this whole thing by sight. It doesn't have to be pretty, I'm not measuring exactly, it just has to fit and function. I will be making a double layer of screen, but I just cut it double wide and folded the screen in half. This turned out to be more of a pain in the neck than anticipated, so next time I'll probably just make 2 cuts. Excuse this short intermission where I realized that I can't find my glue gun, so I had to go borrow one and came back to finish the lid after dark. There's a reason I'm using a glue gun, other than it's insanely cheap and I can get this whole thing done with 50 cents worth of glue. Not only is it adhering the mesh screen to the lid, but it kind of builds up a layer that will fill in the gaps of the loose-fitting lid. You could use silicone or some other animal-approved, non-toxic adhesive, but hey, spend as much money as you want. An important and overlooked part of this process is to build up a layer on each corner. There's a significant gap there that our glue gun can cover up perfectly. Returning back to daylight hours, now that we've secured our tank from intruders trying to get in, it's time to make the Dermestidarium escape-proof. This is simply done by taking a blade, the sharper the better, and removing a few inches of the silicone holding the glass in each corner. Under normal temperatures and conditions, your beetles will not fly, and they cannot climb clean glass. But they will lazily make their way up any sticky surface like this silicone. By removing a few inches, I'm ensuring that they cannot climb all the way to the top. That's it. They're not that bright. Next is the substrate. Yes, I sterilized it in my freezer first. I told you that's the best way to prevent infestation. Ensure nothing gets in. And that includes hitchhikers that could be on anything you put in your Dermestidarium. Substrates, food, bones, everything should be frozen or otherwise sterilized first. Anyways, this 1 gallon bag was the perfect amount of aspen shavings I needed. You only need an inch or two to cover the bottom. Here I have a molting chamber. I've already made a video on those that you can check out here. Here's the camera that goes on that mount. And with that, I'm ready to add the Beetles. Thank you so much to my friend Mothy Bones on Instagram, who was sympathetic to my infestation and donated the remains of her old colony to help in my rebuilding efforts. This colony had several hundred, maybe even 1,000 individuals, and will go a long way in helping me get back on track. I almost forgot. I'm going to attach this heat pad to the bottom of one side. I won't be using a thermostat or anything with this because it's on a big glass tank. The heat will dissipate real fast, and the beetles can self-regulate their temperature at will. They do like it on the warmer side, and bad things happen when you get too cold, but more on that later. Also a note on this substrate, always use a insect-safe, non-toxic substrate. I prefer aspen shavings, maybe shredded newspapers, or any of the paper-based small animal substrates at the pet store. Stay away from any woods that could be toxic. No cedar, no pine, woods like that. Keep it simple, keep it safe. Here I add some mouse leftovers, and you can already see some of the beetles and their larvae coming out to explore their new home. You can even see in this corner over here, we have a few already testing their silicone climbing capabilities. Honestly, I've never cut the silicone before, and I never had a problem with escapees, but moving forward, I'm never taking risks again. Well, now that it's all set up, let's talk parameters while I show this mini time lapse of the beetles hydrating and picking at these mouse leftovers. If you've made it this far, do me a solid and like this video, subscribe if you'd like to see more of my beetle housing videos, and definitely leave a comment on what kind of videos you'd like to see next. First parameter we're going to concern ourselves with is the temperature. A small Dermestidarium like this is meant to be kept indoors. I had a small colony like this in my house for a year or two. As long as you prepare your food items properly, there shouldn't be any problems with smell. But it could be kept in a spare room, an insulated garage, shed, or workshop. This, of course, depends on your climate. I live in Utah, which is a dry desert with hot summers and cold winters. My garage could get 110 degrees in the summer and 10 degrees in the winter. So I try to keep them inside. If your garage gets a little chilly, get a more significant heat source, or in an emergency, I've even wrapped my enclosure in insulation to keep it warm. Check out the first video I ever posted on YouTube to catch a glimpse of that 100-gallon beetle enclosure. Dermestid beetles are temperature dependent, and their metabolisms are directly affected. They will do perfectly fine and serve their purpose at room temperature, though they do like it warmer, which is why I added a heat pad. If their ambient temperature approaches the mid-80s, you'll start running into the danger of the adults starting to fly around. This can lead to escapees and is generally not super great. Warmer than that and your beetles will start eating lightning fast, but you'll be struggling with hydration issues, believe me. One time my Dermestidarium was in my hot garage and I could not get it cool. My beetles sustained daytime temperatures of 107 degrees for almost a week. They didn't seem to be too affected by that other than eating everything crazy fast, but I do know that at 120 degrees, your colony is cooked and dead. On the other side of things, if your temps drop to 60 degrees, your beetles will start to go dormant, their eating will slow or cease, and adults may stop laying eggs. This can be handy if you run into a pickle and for whatever reason you need to put your colony on pause, whether you ran out of food for a minute or you need to leave on vacation for a week or something. Don't do this for permanent storage, thinking you can just pull beetles out whenever you need them. They need to constantly grow and be maintained if you want to sustain them for any amount of time. If you drop below 50 degrees, we've reached the danger zone. Metabolism will stop, and once we get below 40 degrees, you will start getting mass die-offs. All beetles and larvae will die at freezing. So, keeping in mind all we have is a small heater, find an appropriate place to put your beetles where you know they will be happy. The less light, the better. Next parameter we need to be concerned about is humidity. Now, as a rule of thumb, beetles really like humidity and will do well at 60% or more. However, most beetle pests also love humidity and can be kept at bay if we just keep it low. Now, like I said, I live in a desert, and with an open top enclosure like this, I know that the majority of the time my humidity is going to be under 60%. Even if you live in a place with relatively high humidity, the inside of your house is probably fine. Humidity starts to become an issue when we have a closed Dermestidarium, like my freezer build. When the humidity is trapped in a box like that, you start getting condensation issues, which can cause substrate to clump, get moldy, attract mites, generally harboring in colony collapsing awful things. Keeping those in mind, this enclosure is done. Beetles are slow and dumpy. All you have to do is set them up in the right conditions and they'll flourish. If you've made it this far into my video, I regret to inform you that you are legally obligated to hit the following buttons if you haven't already. Thumbs up, subscribe, and the little bell icon notifying you when all my videos are posted. Let me know what kind of beetle keeping video you'd like to see next, and I'll see you next time.